Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men, shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models in mainstream media. So my intention is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing remarkable things in the world. And my guest today is doing just that. His name is Kevin Ross, and he is affectionately known as Rev Kev. He is a loving husband and father, an author, a speaker, a radio host, entrepreneur. He's also the minister of Unity of Sacramento. And I've been following him for years, and I've been trying to get him on the show, so I'm so excited to have him. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Rev Kev. Rev, how you doing?
I'm awesome. Thank you, Michael, for bringing me onto your wonderful program. I love the intention of the program and what you're doing and who you're being for the world right now. So thank you so much.
All righty. So before we jump into your work, let's start off with a few icebreakers. So first of all, tell us where you're from.
I'm originally from the South Side of Chicago, the Roseland Pullman community. That's the same neighborhood and area that Obama did his community organizing in before he became even a senator, way back in the day. So that's where I grew up, in the Roseland Pullman community, South Side of Chicago.
Nice. Now, tell us a little bit about your family, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Well, I come from a really large family in Chicago. My family is the product of that migration from the South, those folks who came up from the South looking for opportunities in the Midwest. And so we're from down South in Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee. And then on my mother's side, and then my father's side, folk coming up from Florida, Georgia type area. And we grew up in a 3-story brownstone apartment where I was the first of my grandparents, I guess today, maybe 50 or 60 grandchildren.
Wow.
Because they had 10 children themselves. I'm the eldest of 3 sons born to Michael and Janice Ross, and they're all my brothers are doing well in Texas. And then here in Sacramento, where I live, work, and worship, I am happily married to Anita Ross, and we have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, and a little dog named Jess.
Nice. Nice. So name a woman who has inspired you to be who you are.
I have to, I don't want to limit it to one, if you don't mind. I have to start with my mother, Janice Ross, who from the very beginning did everything that she could to push me forward to take opportunities. She was the one who insisted that I be in church, insisted that I take piano lessons along with my father, insisted that, I do speech. And she would not only insist, she would encourage me when I was not having the confidence. She would stay up late with me practicing. She would make my outfits and my clothes for the many opportunities that would come my way, and as Abraham Lincoln would say, all that I am and all that I hope to be, I owe to my mother, Janice Ross, and who pushed me literally into existence. So, and then happens to be that February 18th, this very day, is my spiritual mother's birthday, the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman, who had one of the greatest influences of my life. She was my primary teacher and mentor, and made it her business to take what she saw in me and help to cultivate it. It's where I learned what a mentor really is, and so my entire life, I had the great pleasure of having her magnificence to influence me. And therefore, I've always had a tremendous respect and appreciation for women in leadership. I remember once saying to my mother, because I grew up in a church where the ministers were women. I remember telling my mother, can men be ministers too? She was like, what do you mean? And I think I had seen the television show Miracle on 34th Street, and I saw a priest or something in this, I was like, is that like a minister? Like a guy can do this too? She was like, we need to talk. So very grateful for Johnny Coleman and all that she deposited. She gave me my big break as a teenager when I was tag teaming with another powerful young man who grew up with me, Dr. David Montgomery, who's now the heart doctor for CNN and runs his own practice in Atlanta, Georgia. We did tag team youth motivation, known as the Brothers of Thunder, and she would give us opportunities to speak on Sunday mornings at our mega church, which just launched our careers. Literally, we crisscrossed the country, speaking at colleges, churches, convention centers, for audiences just all over the place. And it was she who gave us our entree and our introduction to the greater world, actually. So big appreciation for Johnny Coleman.
Now, name a man that you look up to and admire.
God, that's another, can't limit one. And you just want to stay with one, or can I all right, I'll
give me the Cliff Note version of a couple of them. How about that?
All right, Cliff Note version. Of course, my father, Michael Ross. My dad is the one who inspired me to dream big. My dad is a classically trained jazz artist who had his career launched on Broadway with the Wiz, and then he was with Dreamgirls and Evita, and they're playing my song and a lot of these huge productions. And so as a little kid, he would allow me to be in the orchestra pit with him, where I got to witness, all this magic. So I got to witness Stephanie Mills, as Dorothy on The Wiz, and Jennifer Holliday in Dreamgirls. As a kid, I got a behind the scenes look at the way things work, and I witnessed my father as a Black man be an owner of his own life. He had freedom because he owned his own business. He was a working musician, and he has never done anything different. He owns his own record label, and he has produced his own music, and he's played with all the stars that he's wanted to play with. So I witnessed that in him. And I love my grandpapa, who has since made his transition, John Houston Taborn, who anchored in me what love looked and felt like. It was the embodiment of love. It was the embodiment of family and what it meant. In fact, he gave his whole life, just to make sure that our family knew what it meant to be together and to love and to share. And and he, you know, established traditions that we still cling on to today. So I would start with my father, Michael Ross, and my grandpapa, John Taborn. Yeah, I can go on. There are many others, but let me just stay there.
Yeah, beautiful to have those types of male role models to lay the foundation for who you are as a man. Now, do you like movies?
Yeah.
Name one of your favorite movies.
One of my favorite movies. Oh gosh. You know, it all it all depends, you know. So it can be something as silly as, you know, Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis, I can't never pronounce his name, in the movie Campaign, something just hilariously funny, you know.
Yeah.
Or something very, which still is one of my all-time favorites, very serious and telling, like the movie The Color Purple. I think that's one of my all-time favorites because it just breaks into all the different nuance of what it meant to be Black in the South and coming into our own, those complexities that we had to face and not only among Black people, but the interaction of Blacks and whites and how we address some of our trauma, you know. And I think Alice Walker did a great job in putting that movie together. So that's one of my favorites. Another one is The Matrix. You know, I love The Matrix, the sci-fi-ness of it and the metaphysics, you know, in The Matrix.
Sure.
I can go on, but
there
those
you
are.
go. So, as a man who happens to be Black, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future in general?
I am a tough-minded optimist. I'm a tough-minded optimist. And what I mean by being a tough-minded optimist is I'm one who is aware of the brutal facts, but I don't allow those brutal facts to define my perspective about what's possible, okay? And a lot of the brutal facts about being Black or of African descent in the United States of America is often laced with encounters of racial trauma and racial discrimination and violence against Black bodies. And so this is something that I am aware of, and yet I am encouraged by the tremendous, unprecedented resilience of the African mind in African American. There's something about us that refuses to be exterminated, and refuses to be eliminated, no matter what is put in our way. We have learned to morph and transform repeatedly because we recognize that we are equal, we are worthy, we are entitled to as much future and promise and possibility. We are gifted. We are genius. And we are shapers of tomorrow. And so I'm not pessimistic. I don't allow myself to be pessimistic because that would be a sort of spiritual laziness. If my ancestors could endure the horrors of the Middle Passage, if our ancestors could endure the traumas of chattel enslavement, if our ancestors could withstand the devastating humiliation of Jim Crow segregation, if our ancestors, you know, I can go on and on. And so there's something about that strength that I draw upon in envisioning our future. And so our future is always bright. It's always bright.
Absolutely.
And I firmly believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Love the way you put that. Now, I wrote a book titled The Cure for Onlyness, a Black Man's Guide to Joy, Passion, and Purpose. And in the book, I talk about the challenges that we have as Black men sometimes when we're in environments as the only person of color. So I'm certain you've experienced that in your own life. So how do you navigate that situation?
Well, it goes back to my uniqueness in terms of my spiritual orientation. And so I from the time I can hear and speak, I've been taught this by Dr. Johnny Coleman. I am one with God. I am one with all people. I am one with all life. It was one of our primary tenets growing up. And so this is encoded in my lens in how I see the world. Secondly, I was encouraged from a little one to explore all of the variety of ways of being human. And so I have a unique orientation around that, such that I can look past the ways in which we are alienated in spaces and make myself welcome. In other words, I refuse for someone to tell me that I don't belong. I can't belong. And I know that feeling of social isolation that happens when you are the only person of color, the only Black male in a space, the micro sort of aggressions or the micro abuses that people communicate with their body language to let you know that you're not welcome. But I belong to Earth, and I have every right to be present. And so there's a part of me that refuses to be denied. And I don't have to impose myself on anyone or anything. I just choose not to accept the rejection and the polarization. Now, I will tell you this though, something about me in particular is very interested in building communities of diversity. And so I never leave a place like I find it. And so if I'm in a place, in a space that's deeply homogenous, before long, I start reproducing and replicating the vision of the world that I have in the company that I surround myself with, or in the communities that I'm building, because I don't believe we're going to solve our problems entirely in isolation from one another. And so I start recreating these diverse communities everywhere I go. And it puts the tension in the room on purpose. The tension is in the space intentionally in order to break through and break past the artificial barriers that have been constructed due to race, in the history of race in the United States of America.
Yeah, yeah. And you did an amazing job. So many things we're going to talk about in just a moment. But now I'd like to give you an opportunity. I kind of gave a little short clip of what you do. So now I'd like you just to introduce yourself professionally. Tell the audience what you do.
My personal mission is to inspire and empower millions of people to design and live lives of purpose, passion, peace, and prosperity, and to encourage people to be a force for good in the world. And I do this in a variety of ways. I do this through publishing books. I do this through my community activism engagement in addressing issues of racism, immigration, discrimination, addressing issues affecting our planet. I do this by leading a spiritual community in Sacramento, California, called Unity of Sacramento. I do this by coaching leaders to make a double impact. It's not enough to make a fortune, but you also need to make a difference. I do this by serving as a mentor to a number of outstanding leaders across the country. And I do my best to do this at home as a father and a husband. So this is what I'm up to.
Nice. Now, you are a proud graduate of Howard University. I'm curious, a couple of things. Go ahead.
Well, it's not quite Howard. It's Morehouse.
I'm sorry.
Morehouse College. It's okay.
Morehouse University, my bad. I'm sorry.
I'm in good company with Howard folks, though.
Yeah, you're Morehouse. My bad. So I'm curious though, why did you choose Morehouse?
Well, sort of what I was referring to earlier, when I was growing up, there were very many female role models that were all around me, and there were great male role models. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., though he wasn't living, he was a huge inspiration for me, and so I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And so, as a high schooler, I would give the King Day speeches. I'd speak before my entire high school, giving King Day speeches, and I would emulate and copy Dr. King. And eventually I found out that he went to Morehouse College. And so I said, if he went to Morehouse, I'm going to Morehouse. And so that's what led me to go to Morehouse College and pursue a degree in religious studies.
So you've always had a desire, a drive, if you will, to I'll say be a minister, but it sounds you're more like a leader. But so that because of the influences that you had early on in your spiritual life, you just sort of felt called to ministry?
No. My mother would say, see, what happened was I was influenced to imitate their greatness. And so those influences would show up, like I'd come home. Interesting thing, my mom would tell you, I would stand on a crate in my backyard after church as a little kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, preaching to my playmates with a piece of fabric over my shoulders, like I had a robe on. And then as a teenager, I would be mentored by the great Les Brown. And so I turned a bookcase into a podium in my bedroom as a teenager, and I would practice, giving speeches. If you were my friend before we did Hot Wheels and bike riding or anything like that, or video games, you had to hear me give a speech. So that was just a given, and everybody knows that. I went to high school with a briefcase in my hand and a suit on and a top hat. I was just this really kind of black unicorn coming up.
Had that swag.
Some would say that, yeah. Some called it swag, some called it nerd. It worked out for me though. Yeah. But so it wasn't necessarily my pursuit of ministry. I actually resisted ministry a lot because I was a kid, and so I thought that was going to encroach on my freedoms, and so I wanted to, have fun like everybody else. And so it wasn't until, later in college when I realized that, I'm walking like a duck, talking like a duck, and feeling deeply compelled like a duck. This is surrender to this call. And so ultimately I did, but I fought with it like most people, who are called to ministry.
Okay. Now I'm curious, because it is my belief that there's only two things that will cause a person to want to change. One is pain, and the other is what I call divine discontent, which is obviously just that inner knowing, that feeling that something just is off with our life and we just need to go in a different direction. So in terms of your own personal transformation, was it pain that triggered you to begin that inner journey, or was it divine discontent?
Well, see, for me, I was born into this conversation. This is my first language, the language of transformation. This is my first language. I have not known anything outside of this framework. You get what I'm saying? So whereas some people meet these teachings later in life and have an awakening, and like you are saying, pain pushed them to the point of embracing, a higher wisdom, something that compels it. For me, from as early as I can remember, this is all I've known, like my first language. And so today, I believe I continue to transform out of a deep inner pull to become more of my true and authentic self. I recognize when I am, if I'm struggling because I am resisting the voice of the genuine, that genuine Kevin Ross, the real authentic self. I'm trying to fit myself and my soul into a mold that I've either outgrown or a mold that I know doesn't resonate with my spirit. And so this deep compulsion to be authentic, is what drives me. And sometimes that does, create pain, because it may cause me to have to let go of something that I have become comfortable with, or someone I've become comfortable with, or a place that I've grown comfortable with. But I'm pulled by my vision, not necessarily motivated by pain. I'm not necessarily motivated by pain, but I think I have a little bit of a unique situation in terms of what, my orientation. Now, when I was a little kid, I got in trouble just like everybody else. And I changed my mind with the aid of a paddling, aid of a paddling from a school teacher or a parent, back in the day when those things were allowed. So I know that you're referring to, I'm not trying to act like I'm from outer space or something, but as an adult, that has not been my orientation.
Well, it's amazing that you were brought up in such I'll use the word transformational environment, and it's basically in your bones. Like you said, you were just, surrounded by that. But I'm curious now, a lot of us, when we begin this journey, we have these, I'll call them transcendent moments, where we just kind of had this aha that there's more. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, my more moment came after my divorce, when I recognized that all of my life I had been looking outside of myself for answers, for validation. And then it was in that moment that I got it. There was something else. And that something else was, I wanted to find my authentic self, which you use that term. So I'm curious, did you have any light bulb moments, aha moments that said, ha, I need to do this?
Oh yeah. I've had one of my stories was published some time ago in the Today's Black Woman magazine, where it was a huge breakup with someone that I loved. I was engaged when I was at Morehouse as a student, and taking on a lot of those the traditional ways that I learned from my grandfather, about family and being a man and all that sort of thing, and kind of imposing them on this woman that I was engaged to in college, was it was overwhelming for her. And so my first love, we broke up, or she broke up with me. And in that breakup, I realized, just like you pointed out, that I was, in my desire to be loved and affirmed and acknowledged by someone else, I had projected onto her that which I should have been recognizing within myself. And so, yeah, I had an aha. And the aha was, I am enough. That was the realization. And it wasn't that I hadn't been taught that, but there is a principle that says there is no such thing as undemonstrated understanding. Until we understand it really, we will not demonstrate it in our experience. And so, in as much as I had heard the words, "You are enough just as you are," I hadn't demonstrated the consciousness to produce it in my life. And so that experience was the reminder that I was enough, and that I don't need to come into a relationship seeking anything more than equal partnership, not looking for validation of who and what I am. So that was a powerful insight, powerful lesson. I've had many others since then, but that was one that kind of mimics what you described about your divorce.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer
Mhm.
that in terms of personal transformation, there's no greater lesson than intimate relationships.
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
we can learn so much about ourselves if we're willing to
Mhm.
look within and just challenge our beliefs and assumptions about ourselves and
Mhm.
see how we show up, you know,
Mhm.
because it's been said that the way we do anything is how we do everything.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
how we interact in relationships says a lot about us. And if we're out there, I'm a recovering people pleaser,
Mhm.
you know, always looking for outside validation and wanting people to like me and that process of growth and transformation that got me to that place where you just mentioned, where I know that I'm enough,
Mhm.
just as I am, is what has allowed me to create a blissful marriage for the past 20 years. Because again, I'm not trying to get validation from her. I know who I am. I'm so grounded in who I am. I allow that authenticness to just accept her love and not have to need it, but just to accept it. And that's a really powerful place to
That's
be.
huge. That's huge. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
That's really huge. I hope everybody heard that. That's huge.
Yeah. Now, with
Mhm.
that being said, let's move over a little bit. I like to think of you as a social activist in some ways, and you put together the 10 Commandments for dismantling systemic racism and affirming the rights and dignity of Black, Brown, and Native people. Tell us
Wow.
a little bit. Tell us a little bit about that.
You've been doing your homework. Hmm. Well,
And
in the way,
I've got the commandments here. I just want you to kind of give us what drove that and why did you launch that?
in the as you indicated, I am an interfaith social justice activist. I work with people across faith lines to bring about social change, and sometimes that social change, or the methods for social change, might look like public demonstrations. It may look like engaging with policymakers. It may look like negotiations with leaders to make changes in community. It has a variety of forms. But one of those is reflection and writing. And in the wake of the George Floyd murder, um, it became abundantly apparent to the entire nation that the um, country has prospered and thrived off of institutionalized and structural racism. Because if it was permitted for George Floyd to keep his knee on the neck. I mean, not Derek Chauvin to keep his knee on the neck of George Floyd for over 9 minutes without any immediate consequence. This was a metaphor and for the nature of relationship that people of African descent in the United States have had with as citizens in this country. And so we started to see from our white brothers and sisters of goodwill a desire for change. Okay, I admit it. This put us on Front Street. This is taking us back to the days of, dogs being sicked on children who were marching in water hoses. This was that moment. And so there was this huge confession and a call out for some guidance. And so I, along with some of my colleagues in organizing, reflected on some steps that people could take in order to dismantle systemic racism wherever they were. We presented these in a demonstration. We did a driving march. We got in our cars because of COVID. We had to be careful. So we drove these to the California State Capitol and presented them like tablets. They were in tablet form, like the 10 Commandments, and we put it at the state capitol, and we declared them in front of our state house as a symbol of speaking truth to power. So that's kind of the history behind it.
And I'd like to just read those real quickly because I thought they were so powerful. Just really moved me. So I'm just going to read through them real quick and then we'll go to the next thing. So number 1, thou shalt make no graven image of white supremacy, but thou shalt dismantle all forms of systemic and structural racism. Number 2, thou shalt honor all Black lives in recognition of this. Thou shalt acknowledge Juneteenth and keep it holy. Number 3, thou shalt not kill unarmed Black, brown, and Native people, but rather de-escalate, negotiate, and investigate. Number 4, thou shalt not steal resources or rights from Black, brown, and Native communities. Number 5, thou shalt not bear false witness against peaceful protesters. Number 6, thou shalt not hire nor harbor racist police officers. Number 7, thou shalt divest from the police state and invest in community. And number 8, thou shalt establish accessible and affordable health care for Black, brown, and Native people. Number 9, thou shalt decarcerate nonviolent offenders unjustly sentenced. And number 10, thou shalt enact reparations and restitution to Black people for the legacy of slavery in the state of California. Now, again, I simply am moved by that. And I'm curious though, as a result of that, was there any way to see evidence that it changed anything?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, my work and the work of my colleagues and where I am in Sacramento, which is the state capital of California, keeps us on the front lines and the forefront in discourse and in discussion. So we've seen any number of things, including the passage of the Stephon Clark law, which then changed, due to our activism and engagement, it changed the use of force policy in the state of California as the strictest use of force policy, changing the standard from one of I forget the term, but it changed the standard to necessary use of force. In other words, an officer has to have taken other actions, every action prior to using lethal force. It had to be necessary, rather than arbitrary, that one could use force. And so we've seen policy change. And that's a big part of what people must come to understand is this is a nation of laws. And so institutionalized racism has to be changed through the changing of policies that affect human beings. You're not going to be able to make sweeping changes in people's attitudes around race. It's policies that holds structures of oppression in place. And so influencing the changing of those policies first as an attack on systemic and structural racism is the strategy. And then other organizations then work on changing the heart. But we live in a society. So yes, we've seen examples of those changes. We've seen community benefits agreements go into major development across our state so that you can't have developers coming into an area, gentrifying the area, and not taking into account those that were there prior and not bringing about Black businesses into the contract agreements and long-term training opportunities and all. We've won ground in that area with community benefit agreements, which is very important because it shifts resources that would otherwise never circulate within our community. So yeah, I can go on about concrete ways in which we've seen it happen, and there's more to go. There's a lot to go, but we've seen how direct, clear engagement with the political process, guided by higher principles, can change our town, our state, and our nation. But we have to be those imagineers and pioneers of what public safety looks like, what public health looks like today. Racism is a public health crisis. It's a public health crisis because it affects our very ability to breathe freely, literally. Structural racism makes it possible that low-income housing may be built in areas where there are toxic fumes and overhead electrical currents that would be problematic for someone growing up. So there's so much to it, but I hope I'm answering your question.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I'm just truly inspired because obviously we turn on the news and we see all the negative stories, especially about Black men. And when I see your story and I'm sitting here as I'm listening to you, I'm just so moved by your commitment to making humanity better. Because that's what's needed. So again, I just want to honor you for the work that you're doing, man. And I'm just truly inspired. So I want to wind down now. You are the minister at Unity of Sacramento, and I want to play something that just blew me away. I didn't notice about you, but there we go. I'll play it and then we'll talk about it.
The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain, the Reverend Kevin Cottrell Ross, Unity of Sacramento, Sacramento, California.
Kevin is regarded as a respected interfaith social justice leader, committed to building bridges of understanding and cooperation across race, culture, class, and religious lines. Whether in his role leading one of the nation's most diverse and integrated congregations, conducting diversity and implicit bias trainings, or being an outspoken activist for healing the crisis between law enforcement and communities of color, Kevin is dedicated to strengthening communities through dialogue, direct encounter, and education. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to join me in welcoming Reverend Kevin Ross and thank him for offering today's opening prayer in the U.S. House of Representatives.
May we turn within and look higher to the God of our understanding and pray. Loving presence, we invoke from the celestial balconies the witness of the pioneers of our progress, whose bloody journeys marshaled an unprecedented faith and birthed a new nation of radical inclusion. Bless these sons and daughters of promise gathered in this, the people's house. Let them reach higher for crowns of conscience to exemplify compassion and bring from their districts to their desks sharp pencils that carve on their hearts the faces of freedom that they represent. Let this house be an incubator for our best ideas and not a prison for our poorest politics. Let these heroes and sheroes of the people's house summon the intellectual imagination and the intuitive navigation to serve bolder together and break through the ideological gridlock that arrests the potential of our great republic. Let these innovators of cooperation and builders of the beloved community reunite these states of America and lead the way for a world that works for all. This is enough. In the name of a love supreme, we pray, and so it is. Amen and amen.
Well, all I can say is Dr. King was smiling in that moment. You stirred those same feelings in me as I watched you. Your presence and your words and your soul just shine so beautifully through that prayer. So how did that come about? How did you end up being chosen for that?
Oh, on occasion, one of the things that I do is facilitate town hall events on our campus at Unity of Sacramento International Spiritual Center, bringing voices together to look at ways we can solve our common problems across the state and across the nation. And on one of those occasions, I was approached by Congressman Ami Bera to do that, and I facilitated a town hall, and he was kind of having a tense time being heard. And so part of what I try to be is a moderator for listening, because I don't think that we can fix what we won't face together, and we can't heal what we can't hear. And so I moderated one of the town hall events for him, as I've done for Senator Kamala Harris at the time. She's come to Unity of Sacramento, and others. But that particular one inspired him to then invite me to be a guest chaplain for the United States Congress. He felt so compelled that he invited me to do that. So it was wonderful. I had opened the California State Legislature in prayer on a few occasions. And that could have, I don't know if he knew about that or not, but he did invite me to do this for the nation. And so very deeply honored to offer a prayer for the nation in the same place where all the presidents give their State of the Union address. Really, there are only a couple people in life who ever get to stand there. That's presidents and preachers, give prayers. So yeah. It was an honor. It was an honor.
It was absolutely beautiful. Now, I'd like you now to just share some of the concepts, philosophies of Unity Church. For those who are watching this may have no idea what Unity is. I know when I was a former atheist, before I found Unity, and it literally changed my life. And as a matter of fact, I even contemplated becoming a Unity minister until I realized that you don't have to be a minister to have a ministry. And I have my own ministry per se. But can you just kind of give us some basic ideas and philosophies of Unity Church?
So Unity is a member of a worldwide organization known as Unity Worldwide Ministries, headquartered in Lee Summit, Missouri, about 1,000 spiritual centers and communities across the world, with a history of about 135, 140 years, co-founded by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. After Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founder, had a healing experience and recognized that there is such a thing as spiritual healing, and began to teach about this. And subsequently, her husband, Charles Fillmore, had a healing, and they went on to really establish a mystical tradition within Christianity, which was very bold at the time, because particularly where they were located, they were located in what was considered the Jim Crow South at the time, Unity Worldwide headquarters. But the philosophy was always bigger than the personalities that brought it about. This idea that God is everywhere equally present. There is no absence of God anywhere, no matter what name you call it. That presence is everywhere. And that presence is not just transcendent, but that presence is immanent within each and every individual, thereby making you divine. You're not just human, but you have a spark of divinity within you. Therefore, you have unlimited potential. And you develop that unlimited potential through the use of your thought. You create your reality through your thoughts. Therefore, you're not a victim to anything at anyone at any time, because you have equal access to spirit. You have equal access to the use of your consciousness to change conditions in your life, in your world, in your affairs. And so it opens up a sense of freedom. Unity is centered deeply in the idea of prayer and meditation, and perhaps one of the only traditions in Christianity in the United States that really pioneered a conversation of meditation as a part of our spiritual practice, way before it became in vogue to have meditation in yoga studios and all of that. Unity communities around the world were having meditation as a standard practice. And we think that meditation is a practice where we're listening to spirit. Prayer is talking with spirit, and meditation is listening to spirit. And we also observe the silence as an important aspect of our work, that hang time with the spirit, sitting in the silence, allows us to solidify the character of the one who can then move out into the world and be a force for good in the world. And so at Unity of Sacramento, our ministry is unique in that we have married the unity idea of our oneness with all humanity with the Kingian philosophy of nonviolent social change. And we believe in that we are to awaken to our divine nature, recognize our common humanity, and in that choose a lane in which to be a force for good in the world. That it's not enough to simply say, I've got an insight, a revelation. I'm now spiritually awake and I can manage my own life now. That's wonderful. But you are here. You are in a particular place, a city, a state, a nation, a country, a world. And so that you are awake means that you are to deliver your gifts on the planet and be a beneficial presence where you are. It's the way that God gets to enter society. And so this is, fundamentally what we're all about. Our spiritual community brings together people of all backgrounds, races, and even religious persuasion, non-religious persuasions, who are journeying together to grow spiritually and then make an impact on the planet where we live.
Nice. Now, we're about to run out of time. Are you okay with time? Can you go over a little bit?
I can go a little bit.
Okay, good, good. So again, as mentioned, I'm a former atheist, and I just want to share my miracle of finding unity, because I love this story, and you really relate to it. So I had been doing all this personal growth work, therapy, transformation, or whatever, and I was actually in a program called LifeSpring, and which you're familiar with. And this person comes up to me and she says, "Michael, have you ever heard of Unity Church?" And I said, "No." And she says, "I think you'd really like it." She says, "You're the most positive person I've ever met in my life." And she said, "That's just the way they are in Unity." She said, "They're so positive. Sometimes I don't even go because I can't handle all of that positivity." She said, "But you would fit right in." And so I asked her, I said, "Is it a Christian religion?" She said, "Yes." I said, "I'm not interested." Because again, I was brought up Baptist, had a lot of challenges and difficulties grasping some of the ideas. I was comfortable in my atheism at the time. But she just said, "Michael, just think about it. Think about it." Well, I had become more open-minded at the time. I was more agnostic than atheist. Well, the very next day after that conversation, I'm at home. I'm sitting at my table looking through a phone book, which tells you how long ago that's been. I'm flipping through this phone book, and my phone rings, and I get up to answer the phone. I knock the phone book off of the table. It hits the floor. I go answer my call. I come back. I pick up the phone book. When I set the phone book on the table, there at the top of the page was an advertisement for Unity Church. Now, I had been reading some New Age stuff, right? So I went, ooh, that can't be an accident. That can't be an accident. So I call them up. It turns out they were like 10 blocks from my house. I decide I want to go. So that Sunday, I go to the church. Now, the first thing I did was I sat in the parking lot just to kind of see the type of people that were going to be going in. Again, I knew nothing about Unity except what this person had said. So I decided to go in. I can't put it into words, but I'm sure you'll understand this, Kevin. As soon as I stepped foot in the door of that church, my soul screamed. There was just a feeling, there was a presence that I was in the place that I had been looking all my life for. I go into the church, looking around. I knew I was going to be the only Black guy in the church, but that was okay. I go into the church. I'm the type of guy, when I go to someplace, I sit on the front row, no problem there. I want to soak it all in. I'm sitting at the front row. The minister comes up. She's a female. The first thing she does is says, "Let's do a meditation." Now, I had started meditation a few years prior to that. When I was in the Baptist church, I was told if you meditate, that was trafficking with the devil. But I sat there and she did a meditation, and then she did this prayer that moved me to tears. And I knew that I had found a place that intuitively I knew was there, but I didn't know where to find it. But the universe guided me to this place called Unity, and my life hasn't been the same since. And so I recently wrote a book called "What If Jesus Were a Coach?" And in the book, actually, I had a very conservative Christian person write a review. He loved the book, but he had one problem with it. In the book, I talk about my divorce as a miracle. And he couldn't understand the concept that something so negative could be a miracle. So can you kind of touch base on what miracles are from your perspective?
Yes. In our teaching, we believe that miracles are the outworking of higher law. Outworking of higher law. We believe that we live in a lawful universe, and every now and again, we become aware of higher laws. Those laws that when we grasp hold of them inwardly, they become demonstrable in a way that it appears that God has intervened in our affairs, when really we've just brought in a higher voltage of the presence in our lives, because we've tapped into something that's much higher than our normal functioning. And so the miraculous is always available, but we're not always riding at the frequency where the miraculous is. And so when you are referring to the divorce as a miracle, it probably has more to do with the insight that you gained because of the divorce, which the insight was always present. I wonder if you were always present to what was insightful about the possibility of changing the relationship dynamic. So that's what we look at as a miracle, not a God in the sky, scrambling the decks in your favor. No, it's already in our favor. And then we're tuning ourselves to the miraculous. Right now, simultaneously in your body, there's an orderly atmosphere that's taking place, that's producing saliva, that's circulating your blood, that's regulating your heartbeat, that's producing the enzyme just necessary for digest. All of this is simultaneously occurring while the earth is spinning at such a dizzying speed that you can't even perceive it, while blades of grass are bursting to the ground and the sun is warming the earth, and oceans and rivers are filled with all sorts of aquatic life, and babies are being born, and people are being buried, and so forth and so on. Now, in describing that, I just made us conscious to the miraculous universe that we live in at all times. But we often are living in a myopic world where our view is so narrow, and we define life by our limited viewpoint. But in just a few seconds there, we were able to expand and expand and expand and expand. And our awareness of all that is simultaneously occurring can help us to see that miracles are occurring at all times. I just got to get in the flow. I get to be consciously awake to those miraculous possibilities that are all around me, and that's a transformational insight when you get it. You can't unhear and unexperience that. You now know it's possible. I just get to be available to those possibilities that are teeming at all times around me and for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, another thing that he had an issue with was my use of the term divine intelligence. Mm-hmm. So again, from my perspective, there is a divine intelligence, as you just mentioned and demonstrated so beautifully. But throughout the book, I talk about divine intelligence. And as a conservative Christian, he felt as though I were not focusing on Jesus and the religious dogma and doctrine around his life. But for the most part, he really enjoyed the book, which again, I thought was pretty amazing. Now, with that being said, though, as a minister, I would like for you right now to speak to the brothers out there who may be watching this. And, they may be like I was, don't believe in God. They may be struggling with life and just feel like they don't fit in or whatever. What message can you put out to those brothers right now who may be watching this? Mm. Or what prayer? How about a prayer? That would be even better.
Okay, I got you. So, beloved brothers, we first of all require nothing from you other than your desire to be present with us right now. You don't have to believe in anything, and you can believe in everything. That you are here means that there's something wonderful happening that's been coordinated for our sacred meeting. And it is as much a gift for me to be meeting you in this way. And I feel your connection spiritually as you're tuning in. And as much as you may be meeting me, but this is a sacred encounter. And however you language what sacred is for you, let's tap into that language right now. And let's just have a moment of sharing in the feel of the sacred. That there is something sacred happening in the lives of Black men, brown men, men of color, and men of conscience everywhere. That there is an awakening to our true power, and we recognize that our true power is not in our fists, and it's not in our reproductive organs. Our true power is in our hearts. And we hold such tremendous weight in our hearts for what it means to be men in a time like this, and particularly for what it means to be Black men. But we know that those hearts have a capacity to break free from the stereotypes that have been imposed upon us. We're seeing our hearts break free from the limitations that have been presented to us by society as to who we can be and what our potential is. We see our hearts breaking free to love as we are, no matter how that love shows up. And we begin from this place of the heart to reimagine the possibilities of public safety, that it's safe for us to move through society and be a threat to no one. It's safe for our children to play in playgrounds. It's safe for our families to have barbecues in the park. It's safe for us to matriculate through the educational system. It's safe for us to sit in the corporate boardrooms, and it's safe for us to engage places of power. It's safe for us to open businesses, and it's safe for us to build community. And so we're grateful and thankful to not only the God of our understanding, but our ancestors whose shoulders carry us this day. We're knowing that we're receiving a powerful download of the wisdom that comes from them simply because we've now acknowledged them. And we stand tall in the vision that we're catching for our lives right now. The past is forever gone and absolved and sent to its native nothingness, and we mightily attract to us all of the support and the resources and the village to surround and embrace us as we claim our greatness. We recognize that we are marked for greatness, and we are marked for such a time as this. We are marked and we are sent here to be a transformational presence on the planet. So help us, God, ancestors, angels, ascended masters, village, as we help ourselves. Thank you so much for so much. Amen, Amin, Ashe, Aho, Hotep. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, namaste. Peace.
You the man. Kevin, I love you, brother. So now I'd like to give you an opportunity to, how can people find you if they want to connect with you, learn more about your work or whatever? Tell them how they can reach you.
Well, certainly you can reach me at unityofsacramento.com. Just go to unityofsacramento.com and you can kind of find me there. You can also download the Unity of Sacramento app there. You can also find me on Facebook at Kevin Ross on Facebook. I've got a few pages on Facebook and pages on Instagram at RevKevK, at RevKevK. You can find me all over the place. I'm out there. Google me. But whatever you do, give me a heads up if you're coming my way. I'd love to keep the porch light on for you and maybe grab some coffee when you're in our town or when I'm in your.
There you go. So now I want you to close out with any final thoughts, words that you'd like to share, and we'll move on.
Get all of my books from online.
and the names of, give us the names of a couple of them. Just,
you know, I say that tongue in cheek, but I'm very, very excited. I've been writing books more and more during the pandemic. That's been one of the ways that I've been able to assist people since we've been limited in being able to see people face to face. So there's one book that I co-authored with my brother, Rev Eric Donaldson, called Breathing Space, a 52-week meditation journey for centered, soulful, and successful living. breathing space. And my books are available online at Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Nobles, Books and Books, you name it. We're any of the online carriers have all of our books. But breathing space is something that you might even want to form a little group around. It's there. Yeah, here's another one. The Optimistic Seed and Hug Your Children are books that I've written for children. I'm really excited about these. That's where I was going with this. I've written these books because I've been struck by how my children have been affected by the pandemic, and it was rough, for them, and still is. And so I wanted to inspire a spirit of resilience. And so I wrote the book, The Optimistic Seed, A Story of Resilience, to inspire loving adults to take one action to support kids while they were sheltering in place. And for me, that's reading out loud to a kid, something that will attach to their memories and their spiritual ribcage. So the Optimistic Seed is one that we want to make sure we can gift to as many schools and community organizations and non-for-profits. The same thing with Hug Your Children. This is the second book in what we call Rev Kev Rhyming Reader series. And Hug Your Children is a story that gives you several dozen ways for how to make deposits in your little one's self-esteem account. If you're looking for ways to pick up your children's spirit, Hug Your Children is the one. And these are two tools, along with many other books that we have out there, to support you and your family, but also you and your spiritual growth. So check us out. We'd love your support with that. And we'd love for you to, with some of those books that have the workbook component, we'd love for you to form little groups and get a few of you together and work it. And if you form these groups, I may be able to pop in and speak to your group virtually and encourage you even further.
Well, what I love about it, number one, is we know the stereotype of the deadbeat dad, right? We see throughout the media, Black men not taking care of their kids, and the fact that now, obviously you're a great father, but to write books to inspire our children, I love what Tyler Perry said. He says, stop fighting for room at the table, build your own table. And as Black men, we've got to put our content out there. We've got to build our own tables. And this is just one way to do that. So again, I appreciate the efforts in putting those books out specifically for our children and for parents, so that we as parents can be better parents. So again, I appreciate you for that. So again,
and I think that's the message, that you are enough.
Yeah.
You are enough to write your own book. You're enough to start your own business. You're enough to build safety within your community, or whatever it is that you're enough. You don't need to look outside of you. The creativity is there, the gifts are there. And from that place, you take the first step, and a bridge of incident that you cannot and need not devise will make itself available to you in common hours. Just take the first step.
There you go. Great way to end. What did Dr. King say about you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step?
Take the first step.
Take the first step. Well, Kevin, thank you, my brother, for showing up. Thank you show up in the world. It has been my absolute joy and pleasure. I've been trying to catch you for a while, so I'm glad we finally connected.
I appreciate your patience, brother, and I appreciate what you're doing, and keep up the great work. You're amazing.
It takes all of us, my friend. It takes all of us. So this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes, and my guest today definitely is doing that. So I just want to say again, I honor you, I appreciate you, I love you. Congratulations on just the amazing human being that you are.
Thank you, brother Michael. Appreciate you.
Take care, guys. We'll see you next episode.